Welcome. You're listening to another episode of Whistlekick Martial Arts Radio, or perhaps you're watching on YouTube, and if you're there, welcome. We're excited to have you. Although, truth be told, we're excited to have you if you're just listening too. We are joined today by Stephen Watson and Tommy Given. I'm so excited to see you guys both today. How are you?
I'm doing good.
I'm doing good plus a little bit better than Tommy. So good plus.
Yeah.
Excellent. I'm excited to get into today's episode, but before we do, in case we have any new listeners or viewers to the show, here at Whistlekick Martial Arts Radio, we obviously produce this amazing podcast, over 1,070 episodes at this point, all brought to you completely for free. You can find out all the information about all of our podcasts at whistlekickmartialartsradio.com. But Whistlekick does a lot more than just this podcast. You can go to whistlekick.com to find out about all of the other things that we do, whether that's release books or training programs or sparring gear or apparel, or maybe you're a school owner and you'd like to join our Whistlekick Alliance to join other like-minded school owners to help grow your school. All of that stuff can be found at whistlekick.com, and we'd love for you to go there and check out all the things we do. Or maybe you want to come to one of our events that we host around the country. So we'd love for you to go there, check out all the stuff that we do. And if you do go there and purchase anything, you can use the code podcast15 to save yourself 15% on almost everything, but not everything. But go there to find out all of the things you can. And today we are here to talk about self-defense without doing harm. And I was thinking of this the other day when a video pop-up on my Facebook came up about my first degree black belt test when I tested in Shotokan. And one of the things the instructor would have us do was we had these self-defense scenarios that we had to come up with. Somebody attacks you with a haymaker, how would you defend yourself and whatever. And I went through them and he said, okay, now I want you to do the same thing, but this time I don't want you to hurt your opponent. And I was like, what? He said, yeah, I want you to pretend that it's your drunk uncle, that you're at a wedding and he's just getting handsy with someone and you don't want to hurt him. And so I thought this would be a really great, fun thing to talk about. And who better than Stephen and Tommy? So, Stephen, when I mention that little story, what comes up for you? What thoughts do you have on that?
Well, I think often martial artists are driven to martial arts by their ego, which is often sparked or flamed by popular culture, right? Bruce Lee doing the cool thing in the movie, or Jeff Speakman doing the cool thing in the movie, or whatever it might be. And if we think about use of force as a spectrum, the way law enforcement does, law enforcement is intended to start their use of force spectrum at the least force in any encounter, and then ratchet up or ratchet back down during one situation, maybe moment to moment, sensibly, responsibly, which is really hard. But starting, I think I'm yelling. I'm so excited about the topic. I feel like I'm like very loud. So the idea of like, let me start with as little force as I can is contrary to what most martial arts do, which is like, I'm working hard to get flexible and powerful and concentrate my mind and work, break all the boards and do all this stuff, because if it ever happens, and of course I'm going to pay lip service to, I hope it never happens. But the truth is, I'm a martial artist. I kind of want to know what would happen and if they push you too far, or do I finally get to do the thing? And then my tendency is to start really up here with the spinning hook kick or the double thing and the choke out and the all the rest of it. And that's not based on a reading of the situation. That's based on the urgency of my ego, which has been denied for all these years of training, when all I did was punch a bag. Like, come on, I want to see if this really does break a jaw or whatever my fantasy is. So what I think about is that sort of drunk uncle idea is a very helpful way to think. Let's not start at the top of your use of force spectrum. Let's start lower down. So that's what I think.
Yeah, Tommy, what do you think?
Very similar. You know, especially like Sifu Steve just said that you know, in a law enforcement situation, you want to use the least amount. If you could talk your way into whatever the situation out of it is the most desirable. Where there's no no hands on at
Yes.
all. Where they can come in and just kind of redirect everyone back to it. Doing store security or any kind of work that you're doing. If you feel something abrupt, like in a restaurant, the guy's arguing now with the waitress. If the waitress can just get that person redirected by giving them an extra salad or whatever it is, that's avoiding conflict in a
Yes.
positive way. And avoiding conflict, isn't that really what it is? So, I always think of that moment in the Karate Kid movie where um, he's on the boat, with Miyagi, and he's practicing on the boat, and and Miyagi asks, goes, "Why you learn? Why are you taking this? Why are you doing all this karate? Why are you working so hard?" He goes, "I want to learn how to fight." And Miyagi just puts his head down, and then he looks up and he goes, "Wait, so I don't have to fight." He had that. He had that. That moment, that epiphany where I can train to the point where I don't have to enter this conflict anymore. I'm not in conflict with
Yeah.
myself. I'm not in conflict with my girlfriend. I'm not in conflict with the idiot that's trying to, bust me in the nose right now. The only conflict is in himself, And as you know, we talked about it before, Aikido, that's the whole art. The essence of that art is, way of harmony, way of harmonizing energies, way of heaven, to be that ultimate spot where no matter what's coming at you, they're taking on nature itself, so there's no harm.
Yeah, and the thing that I think of in terms of like, definitely we've had episodes, and I know Tommy, you and I have talked it at great length about being able to dissolve a situation or before it happens. The one that we see that we have seen all the time in the movies is Enter the Dragon, right?
Yeah.
When Bruce Lee is on the boat and John, what was his last name?
John Saxon. No.
John Saxon wanted to fight him on the boat,
Yeah.
and Bruce Lee's like, "Let's go over to that island. Let's get in this boat." And he just lets John get in the boat, releases the rope, and now he's stuck and he's gotten out of the fight. But I'm thinking more in long term in terms of when I was growing up in martial arts. And again, I grew up in Goju-Ryu and then switched to Shotokan. And so this black belt test for me was, I'd been studying Shotokan for quite a while in my mid-20s, and I've always been told that, one punch should end the fight, right? So when someone came in with a haymaker or went to choke me, I was going the most aggressive I could. And it was very much that what I was used to, what I'm used to training, because that's what I was taught. And
Right.
I think in hindsight, him telling me, "I want you to do the same thing, but I don't want you to hurt your attacker." Because what if it's, maybe he's not trying to choke you, but you need to subdue him for whatever reason, your drunk uncle. I think that's something that I didn't think of in my younger years. And I think that's where I think we as martial arts instructors need to think of that for our students.
Yeah. The maximal power idea that you were doing in Goju-Ryu
Shotokan.
suggests to, or Shotokan early, yeah. Suggests to me that your sense of what the art was maximum power.
Mhm.
And when it comes time to deliver, your sense of what the art is, plus your sense of I need to impress, I need to be seen to be really applying myself, kind of means you're always turned up to 11. And that means you don't have even the question in your mind of what volume should I make this particular technique, because it's binary. I'm either not doing it or I'm, completely going all out. And I don't think that's like you're to blame. You just hadn't had that type of thinking. Now you have that type of thinking. You can say to yourself, I have 4 different levels or 400 levels or whatever, and try and read the situation and explore what you have in your toolkit. You know, in going back to the law enforcement idea, when we have this use of force spectrum that we might have heard about, does anybody here know what the least use of force is? What is it's described as on the spectrum?
My guess would be raising your voice.
That is not the least, but it's way
Okay.
down there. It's having an officer present in uniform looking the part,
Hmm.
right? That's it. Maybe just chatting to somebody selling cookies and they're just having conversation. Now, if that officer there does not look the part, right? Their uniform doesn't quite fit. They have a stain on their pants. Their holster looks old, and right, and they don't have good posture, let's say. Your sense of the authority in the space is different than if that person looks like they are just, they're ready to train recruits. Not necessarily angry and standing rigid, but like really they look up to the task. So that's actually the lowest use of force, which is the presence of the officer, right? And then we move up to sort of demeanor and voice and discussion and that sort of a thing. But even just kind of being aware of that, I always feel like if the conflict is brewing and it might become physical, like if I adopt my demeanor, my breathing, and my stance, I'm pretty sure that the other person's not going to push it. I haven't like even done a thing, right? It's not going to be a good YouTube video, but I will convey to them that we're at the very beginning of a long spectrum of use of force, and I'm rehearsed at all of it, and I'm happy to do, any level, and to be able to convey that with confidence and not sort of performative expression is what we want to do. When you asked how do we convey to our students this idea of not hurting, I think it's really important, going back to what Tommy was saying with the Karate Kid, is, are we doing these martial arts so that we don't bring harm to the world? And myself, I'm included in the world. And through the doing of the martial arts, I developed the ability to deploy violence. That is one of the things that happens, right? In the same way I can do a split, and that's like an offshoot of having done martial arts. I can do a split, or I know how to stretch a shoulder safely or something, or breathe well. But the reason that I'm doing it has nothing to do with violence. It has everything to do with healing and connection and learning. And the practice gives me this option of violence, but it isn't at all what I'm pursuing, which will pass by a lot of people looking at it from the outside, of course, right? They're going to tune into that looks really powerful and I'd love to hit somebody too. I get that. But how do I make sure my students get that? Because if they just see what's on the outside, they're going to be like, well, you kick really hard. I love your punches. And that style looks vicious, which is fair. It does. But that's not actually what I'm working on.
Yeah.
It's what I'm
Tommy?
working with, but not what I'm working toward.
Yeah. Thoughts, Tommy?
Yeah. I used to have a picture, and Steve probably saw it at some point. I had it in most of my schools, and I'm trying to find it again. But it was a cartoon drawing, like the ones that you would see like in Studio Board, where they have the different rows coming down. And the top row was the worst kind of martial artist. And it has a guy there, and an evil person comes up, and it's a cartoon, so it's dressed up to look like, a shady person. And whatever that means nowadays. And the guy comes up and just kills the guy. And then he's walking away. Then the next step was he does some training, and so he confronts the conflict, still loses though, and then the other guy walks away. Then the third level was that guy comes up, there's a conflict, but he wins the fight, quote unquote wins, and win is actually in quotation marks, and he walks away and the other guy's laying down on the ground. And the fourth and final part was the guy comes up looking for trouble. He's able to defend himself by just putting the guy gently on the ground, and then heals his boo-boo that he got from being on the ground, and then they get up and walk away together.
Love it.
So that
Yep.
was the 4 levels of a martial artist. And so to be able to have the skill to stop the guy from whatever he's doing, still put him on the ground without really hurting him, saw he hurt him, and then was still able to heal. And then underneath it, the quote was, true healing only takes place when both people walk away changed. So there's that
brilliant.
big
Yeah.
turmoil that's going on.
Yeah, I love that.
You know, so when you're in the middle of that tornado, we've all been there. If you're able to see through that storm and see the rainbow on the other side, and see the parting of the clouds on the other side, or my dog howling in the other room, that's that's the joy. That.
So what I'm thinking, if I may, Andrew,
Yeah.
is that everything that Tommy described, these 4 levels, are at least 4 times more complex than how somebody thinks martial arts is, right?
Sure. Yeah.
And it's 4 times less appealing, like to the ego and the emotions, right? And really complex, therefore it takes more mental energy, more time in on the dojo mat to learn. And it doesn't feed my ego. All of that stuff is like deeper work, right? So if we presume that people will tend to come to the martial arts looking to address their ego, their emotions, and their sense of simplicity, like I'm moving to a dangerous part of town, I want to learn self-defense. Like just that's how they might present themselves to you. Then I think what our task is to find a way to receive them, which generally may mean I need to be able to show them that I do have the ability to do what they want, but then start to introduce as early as I can the seeds of complexity, and the seeds of what I'm trying to sow here are not simply ego and emotion driven. Somebody hurts me, I hurt them.
Yeah.
So how do I introduce the sense of those complexities and then start to work towards them? Because they're going to probably come to me just, I've been bullied a lot, I want to fight back, like very sort of simple. And so I find that if I can't demonstrate some of that, they're not in a position to listen to me. So I need to be able to demonstrate, hey, I can play with you, I can talk this language, I can do that stuff, but here's how I'm really addressing myself. It's much more complicated and complex than it looks. And if I overwhelm them with that complexity too soon, it's not what they're looking for. They just want to, hit a bag a bunch. So, and if I do it too late, then I lose them because I'm just supporting what they came in for. And that's a challenge.
Yeah, for sure. And I think for me, like I put a lot of thought into and this was years ago, almost 20 years ago at this point. Like I put a lot of thought into it since then. And there is nothing, I want to make it really clear to people listening. I think there's nothing wrong with teaching in your school. Somebody grabs your wrist and you do whatever technique that is, and you punch them, you kick them, you get them on the ground, that, you hurt them. I'm not saying that that's a bad thing to teach. If I am on the street and I'm with my wife and someone attacks us, I'm going to defend myself, and the other person is likely to get hurt.
Right.
I don't want that to happen, but it's likely going to happen. But I think for me, it's an important distinction between, and I'm going to keep coming back to the drunk uncle or a friend, or, I've got an uncle at a wedding, hypothetical, I don't really have an uncle like this, but I've got an uncle at a wedding, and he's had too much to drink, and he's getting really handsy with someone's girlfriend or whatever, and is starting to get violent, right?
Yes.
I want to be able to subdue that person, but I don't want to necessarily to hurt them. I don't want to break their head. I don't want to, bust up some arms. And I think for me now, when I'm teaching, I make a conscious choice now. I often will teach, here is a technique where we would hurt the person, and here's a technique for where we would not hurt the person. And I think that's the important distinction that I think we, at least at a minimum at the base level, needs to be considered.
At Whistlekick's free training day in Philly area, Chichester this year, Sarah Beth South taught a workshop called Drunk Uncle. I mean, there was a fuller
Right.
name, but it was basically Drunk Uncle.
I love it.
And I thought it was great because it's this idea of how do you address
Mm.
somebody that you don't actually want to hospitalize or have a career threatening injury, but you still need to manage it and separate them from somebody, take them down, get them outside, that sort of thing. And I just thought, just the way you've used it today, Drunk Uncle, at least for me, I immediately knew what the workshop was about, like, and that's not
Mm.
generally taught, like, so it's
Yeah.
very,
Yep.
very exciting to hear that phrasing. I think that understanding that there's a spectrum of possibilities that are available to us if we're going to intervene is important. I teach a martial art in a way that is entirely nonviolent. So the whole goal of the martial art, as I understand it, and I teach it, is that I need to care for the person that I'm in conflict with the same measure of concern as I am concerned for my own health. So there's no point at which I'm going to try and take care of them as long as I can take care of myself. I'm interested in caring for them from the beginning, even if they have a knife or whatever, and caring for those around us and caring for myself, which is enormously complex and a very sophisticated way of thinking. It's very hard to do. But for me, I find it a important whetstone practice for my spirit to really work on developing.
Mm.
Well, there's a lot there in that
Tommy?
nugget that Sifu just did. So, yeah. So,
Muted.
You're
Tommy's
muted,
muted.
Tommy.
This is perfect. My chi field is finally shutting Tommy up. I've dreamt of this day. This is so.
so this is where we
See,
hand
I
over our black
non-violently
belts and
shut him
statues
up.
now
It's
because you
fantastic.
just
Just, it looks like he might have a little mic problem or something. He had a little drop off the connectivity a minute ago, so
Yeah,
maybe
yeah,
this
we,
is.
we still can't hear you, Tommy. That's okay. It's funny that I brought up the drunk
can you
uncle
hear me
thing.
now?
I didn't even know that Sarah Beth had taught
Oh.
a class like that in
Okay,
at
yeah.
free
So,
training in Philly.
that's bizarre.
Yeah, it's
The
fantastic. Now we hear you.
Sarah
Yes.
Beth's
Yeah,
doing that
go ahead,
again, by
Tommy.
the way, just for a little note. She's doing it at Marshall Summit. She has so much positive feedback from Philly. But there was so much to digest in what Sifu said
Oh,
a
great.
moment ago. It is good for your spirit. It is good for your heart. Especially if you're walking into the situation, it's a drunk uncle. This is my favorite uncle. He had that one too many. However, that's my favorite cousin as well. So now you're trying to weed through all of that. If you can get your uncle an comforting hug, turn him around, walk him outside, and yet he the whole time is only thinking, "Oh, it's my nephew giving me a hug." Everybody wins, right? No one's offended. No one gets hurt. A week later, you get a text message from your cousin saying thank you. Um, and and I don't know. I mean, I found myself in a lot of situations where
Right.
you could tell it was a miscommunication or someone just simply did not understand the other person fully or at all, or didn't care to understand, didn't care enough to understand, and something got escalated, but it never had to go there
Right.
at all. And it seems to be easier today to offend somebody than it was when I was younger. I don't know. That's because I'm older now and I see more. I don't know. Um, but he said spirit. Right, right. Well, that was my next thing. Is that
You
because you
can't
said
you
spiritually,
can't give somebody
if I
offense. They
don't
can
take
only take
offense
it.
to anything that you're doing, and I truly care about my neighbor, and I truly want to love up on them, and I truly want to see what's best for
Mm-hmm.
them in their best interest, not mine, then
Yes.
it makes my martial arts a lot more complete as well. It gives my training a lot more meaning as well. I'm no longer just
Right.
trained, there's a different levels of martial arts where, right, we do muscle, we repeat ourselves, so there's muscle memory, and then the muscle memory becomes instinctive. eventually, and I see very few people, but it does happen, where that instinct becomes who you are. And if who you are is that person and wants to help the neighbor versus just smash them in the face, like when maybe the first reason we moved in. I mean, I was brought into martial arts as a kid, purely ego,
Right.
and my father's ego on top of it. You've been vicariously through what I was able to do. Let's be honest. But all that's gone away now.
Sure.
It's not even part of what I remotely think about until you bring it up right now. No.
One of the things that I think is very interesting is that if you hurt somebody, let's say as a self-defender, you break their arm or whatever it might be, um, it tends to stop communication, right? Because they turn inward, this hurts and you're a jerk and I need to get away or something like that. And you tend to turn inward, either I can't believe I had to hurt somebody that bad, or you turn elsewhere, meaning I'm going to call the authorities or let's get my family out of here, that sort of thing. But at the point of injury, we tend to dissolve the bridge of communication between the two parties, right? And something that I studied for years is called professional assault response training, or PART training. And it was I don't know if it's still used, to be honest, but I'm sure you can Google it. Maybe it's been updated or something. But it was used in intellectual, mental, emotional institutions for people with developmental disorders and issues of the emotional, intellectual, mental side. And quite often, you'd have to physically intervene. Somebody's hurting themselves, somebody's damaging, let's say, equipment and risking their own health, or obviously attacking staff or other people in the community, right? And so you can't just go roundhouse them in the head, because that would stop the conflict. But this person is in your care, right? And so professional assault response training was developed to, how do you bring this person to stillness, right? And it's based in this sort of philosophy that all behavior is communication. And if I injure them, I'm sort of severing the communication. And so how do I continue to communicate? And often what we would do is what Tommy was pointing at, is if you can get them in a hug from behind, their tools are directed outward away from you, and you're sitting with them or standing with them. And now that puts your mouth next to their ear and your heart next to their heart, so you can breathe with them and, talk them through and give them time. But they're restrained, sort of seatbelted, if you will. And, there's a whole bunch more to the protocol, but just to give you an idea. But just this idea of that behavior is communication. And if I can see that the behavior, however violent, is just a communication, that suggests to me there's an alternative to the simple iron broom technique to take them down, that I'm definitely been willing to waiting to try, and even though I could make a case for I could have done it here legally, maybe thinking of communication allows me to see other opportunities, which are more difficult. It's way more easy just to kick the guy, do your cool move, for sure.
And I think that's why instructors tend to use that as a default. It's definitely, and I think every single person listening would agree that it is much easier to teach someone how to punch effectively with power and force than it is to teach somebody how to do a takedown with a subduing technique. It's definitely easier to do the striking route. But I think what we're all saying is there's benefit to learning other. Not that those striking arts are bad. I teach that for sure. But having some nuance and different levels of force within your own training, and if you are passing it on to others, teaching them how to do that, I think, is really critical.
It almost comes natural, right?
Mm.
But when you have to look at it where both walk away and not hurt. No.
Yeah.
Here's a question I like to pose. Presuming that you are not psychopathic, is it possible to hurt somebody else without hurting yourself? Right. And some
That's an
people
interesting question. Yeah. Yeah. That's an
some
interesting
people
question.
will not show their hurt, right? They will say, hey, I have a rationalization, I have an excuse, I have a reasoning for what happened, and I obviously didn't hurt my knuckles when I punched them, and I'm okay with it because they're in
Yeah.
prison and the world's better. I would say that's a description of somebody who is hurt.
Sure.
Okay. Like, yeah. So I like this kind of philosophical question. Can you hurt somebody without hurting yourself?
I mean,
Right.
I would say physically, yes, I could hurt somebody and not physically
Physically
hurt
hurt
myself.
yourself. Sure.
But I think for me the answer would be no. There is
Yeah.
going to be mental anguish. There's going to be issues within myself. I
Yes.
think yes. I think the answer is you can't. For me, I'm only answering for myself because I'm not a psychopath.
Yes.
I
Yes.
can't. I
For
can't
sure.
hurt someone and not hurt myself.
So then the question is, if I'm trying to be nonviolent with regards to the other person, is there any way I can hurt them that doesn't hurt myself? You've said no. So that takes away the possibility of elbowing them in the carotid,
Yep.
which your ego doesn't want to hear because you've been working on that move. And sometimes people deserve it, right?
And it looks really good.
Can I answer that?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So here's can I share something here?
Tommy
Is
being the
that, or were you
closest to
gonna,
a psychopath
I didn't want
out
to,
of the
if you're
three
going
of
to drive
us,
the conversation,
I would
please, Tommy.
still have to say no though. Imagine the amount of the tens of thousands of dollars that I've spent in therapy. Would have gone to waste, right? I mean, I don't think you can enter a situation
Mhm.
and be, in the natural and not hurt yourself. I mean, yeah. So, you know,
Yeah, these are important questions to consider as martial artists.
Yeah, I would
Um,
agree.
the um the notion that I can't, that we're presuming here, we can't hurt somebody else without hurting ourselves, and yet I want to be a self-defender, you know, gives me this idea that, oh, there's something else. One of the things that I think about is that, or this is how I teach my students. You have your kid, they're on the school bus. They get off the school bus and they tell you so and so bullied them or pushed them, let's say. And you say, well, make sure you tell the school bus driver, pay attention to him, try and be nice, sit with a different friend. And the next day or the next week, well, the same thing happened. Did you tell the school bus driver? Yeah, I told them before to keep an eye out, but I also told them after. Okay. And you re-equip them with the, set firm boundaries, pay attention, don't stare into your books, sit somewhere else on the bus. Then the third or fourth time, same kind of story. And let's just imagine now that this has happened 85 days in a row, which is, I'm exaggerating the number. I think anybody listening to this would say, look, on day 85, right? Probably sooner, you're going to say, listen, son, this is how you do a sidekick. What I want you to do, sidekick him right in the groin. He'll drop like right. And the teaching that I give around this is that you've wanted to hit the bully back through your kid for the whole time from day one.
Yep.
But you realize that you would be the bad guy and your kid would too, right? They would be scorned by society, punished, and all the rest. And so the reason that day 85 you said to do it is that at that point, I just picked that number 85. At that point, you're sure that nobody would paint you as the bad guy. And the only reason you're saying to kick the bully is that you have always wanted to, and you think you won't pay for it now because everybody will be on your side. So it's not really a self-defense move. It's an expression of the ego. And it's an expression of the ego in the context of how I think I'll be seen by society. But that's not really what you're saying when you teach it. You're saying this is how you teach a lesson, this is how you defend yourself. But that's not really what was taught. something else was taught there.
Yeah.
And so the reason I teach this is to help people self-examine. Really, you just wanted this from the beginning. You just didn't think you could get away with it. And if we're just responding to our wants, are we becoming masters of ourselves, masters of the martial arts? Are we really understanding human nature? Or are we still the reflexive person that came into the dojo saying, I'm getting bullied, show me how to fight. I saw your style of Ishinru in a movie, right? Is there any growth? Right. And none of my students has ever wanted to hear that, right? ever once.
That is an interesting interesting take on it, and it's gonna lead to some introspection for myself, and hopefully for our audience as well. What Jeremy and I often talk about, whether you agree with us or not, we hope that it at least gives you something to think about. And
yes,
I hope that this episode gives you, the audience, something to think about. Maybe we said something you completely, wholeheartedly disagree with. You can email me at andrew@whistlekick.com. I'd love to hear it. Maybe we said stuff that you agree with completely and you want to tell me. You can still email me at andrew@whistlekick.com. I would certainly love to hear from you, for sure.
Keep the dialogue going. Yeah,
absolutely. Steve and Tommy, thank you so much for being here. Really, really appreciate it. Every time we get together, it's great. This episode will be airing on Thursday, November 6th. So if you're listening to this on the day it comes out, Martial Summit's happening today. It's happening tomorrow. It's happening the next day on Saturday, and it's happening on Sunday. Not too late to make it. Now, unfortunately, if you're listening to this a couple weeks after it comes out, you'll just have to wait till next year, but we hope we see you there. As a reminder, whistlekick.com to find out about all of the things that we do at Whistlekick. Whistlekick Martial Arts Radio.com is where you can go to find out about this episode and all of our other episodes and get show notes. You can also subscribe to our newsletter so you can hear about every episode as it comes out. Thank you guys so much for being here.
Thank you.
And as always, train hard, smile, and have a great day.
Thank you.